Everybody good to go? Camera to
Yeah.
speed, lights to action. And we'll be fielding your questions here. So we shall be ready when you are.
Lee, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
okay, cool.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
good.
I can hear you. I can
You're
hear you.
good. So, Chris, tell us about how you feeling. This is your baby. You've been working on this for years, getting it together,
Yeah,
and here you
yeah.
are.
This is definitely something that's been in the works for a long time. It actually kind of started with role playing games, really running RPGs for my friends, creating characters, and doing kind of all that stuff. And over time, playing war games, coming up with our own ideas, our own takes on things, and also, old video games. Everyone kind of
Sure. Yeah.
points to a few old video games as some reference material. And yeah, it's really a conglomeration of things that we're all kind of interested in, different science fiction tropes and things like that. And over the pandemic, really, we really kind of were able to get some time to put aside and finally do something, get a book together, and it kind of went from there.
Okay. So so we got your influences. So how was your thought process about creating the game? From like what miniatures you were going to use, what factions you were going to use, the scale you were going to be in.
So that actually came about in a number of different ways. Um, Sorry, everything's gonna start making noise now. Sorry, sorry. Just take the phone here. Sorry about that. It really came about from a number of different games that we enjoyed. So there's a lot of micro scale stuff we started playing with our small gaming group. And another one was just kind of the genre of diesel punk itself. A lot of sci-fi World War II stuff.
Okay.
And I thought really what would be interesting would be, what if we took that same kind of idea, right? That kind of historical fiction where it's real-ish looking vehicles, or maybe some that are realistic looking, and we put, sci-fi weapons on those. And that's kind of where the idea started. That was like the base idea, right?
Yeah.
What if we put some cool laser guns on a T-72? What if we put cool laser guns on an Abrams, right? And over time, it really kind of evolved from there. And we not only just started doing, oh, here's a historical vehicle with like a weird gun on it. It was like, all right, now how do we make this our own? How do we kind of take it and twist the art style into something that's different and that meets our factions? And that's where the faction ideas kind of came in as well. Was what if the world after some kind of apocalyptic sci-fi event kind of broke off into essentially kind of like post-World War II, early Cold War like blocks, right? So you have North America, you have Western Europe, and then Eastern Europe as its own kind of starting point. And then we went from there. And then obviously you have the monsters that kind of push everything together, and that's the reason why everyone's kind of fighting. The Crystallum is both an energy source and a source of danger for humanity as well, because you got the monsters that come in.
And then Vladimir Putin then took your book and decided to enact it in real life.
No, no. So the game was in development way before any real life stuff kind of happened. I mean, we have obviously some Cold War stuff being used, but I think even in the expansion that we're working on now, we're taking designs even further. We are going even crazier. As you've seen some of the stuff I've shown off on the Facebook group, things like the Kaiser Tribe salvage wagon really got a positive response. And hopefully at some point we get that vehicle out there, either via the Kickstarter through stretch goals, or maybe afterwards. Those kind of like really, really weird, interesting designs, people took really well to those. The Crusader was another one with the kind of quad track design, and the Cabby. And there are a bunch of really cool looking vehicles, and I really want to kind of go even further with some of the designs.
Yeah, you came up with some really original design work for things that I have not seen before. You know,
Yeah,
I
I
have.
can't take the whole credit though. The sculptors we have are magnificent. It's mostly Dallas Messina and Riley Hereford are our sculptors on the project,
Uh huh.
and they are amazing. There's some other people too who have put in some work for sculpting as well, Roberto and Nasir, and a couple other guys, but the main two guys are Dallas and Riley. So some really, really great, talented people.
Yeah, I like the fact that you guys really collaborated to make this happen. It's a group effort. You've built a really strong community around the game and the concept. Having excellent artwork has not hurt you at all. Having miniatures that people are familiar with but are new and exciting at the same time, I think that has helped a lot. So tell me about the creative process that you guys, do you say, hey, I want something to look like this, and then they just go back into the drawing room and then start working on it? How does that process go?
So it's kind of simple and complicated at the same time. Really, you always start an idea with, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if?" Right? And then pull in something there. Wouldn't it be
Right.
cool if we had a giant
Sure.
robot with 20 laser guns, or what if we had an Abrams with double barrel cannon? And then you kind of work off from there. You go, all right, what would such a unit look like? You start statting things out. What battlefield role would it be? What role would it fill in a faction? And from there, you start kind of doing the math. All right, how much health should this thing have? How far should the move be? What's its kind of theme? And then from there, if the idea sticks, right, you can kind of decide, all right, we want to go further with this, and we want to start coming up with a visual. And then from there, it's, is this visual completely fantastic? Is this visual more grounded? Like, are we going to do something more historical looking? We're going to do something more kind of crazy sci-fi looking. And then gathering references and resources, and obviously you do that from a lot of real world things. So if it's based off a real world vehicle, then you obviously get a ton of reference material and things from that, and figure out how can we change it, how can we modify it to make it look in universe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How do we integrate the weapons? What weapons we want it to have? All that stuff. And if it's something completely fantastical, I mean, and everybody does this, you look towards the media you like, any kind of shows, video games, things like that, for stuff that you really kind of enjoy. Maybe you like a really kind of heavy looking diesel punk look for something, or maybe you want to go with a more fantasy route, like we have some fantasy flares kind of in the Atlantic Council. And you kind of pull all those together and you look them over and you say, all right, what little bits from each do we like, and how can we take them and make them our own thing, And from there, it's pitching it to an artist, getting artwork done, taking the artwork, taking it to a sculptor, getting a model sculpted off that. Another thing to kind of be aware of is there's a lot of concessions you have to make from artwork to 3D model sculpt, right?
Okay.
So sometimes you have this crazy piece of and it's even something I'm dealing with now, doing all the expansion stuff. You have this crazy cool piece of art, right? That's like a giant mech or a tank, or it has all these details. Maybe you have like 20 different like wires all going into like a generator. When you go to the 3D model, especially because we're doing resin and 3D printing and all that stuff, you got to take a lot of those crazy kind of flares, and you have to scale them down to make them functional. So that's an art form kind
It's
of
a compromise. It's a compromise.
Yeah, you have to make those compromises to make sure that the model's going to print. You're going to be able to print a master. You're going to be able to print, countless other ones for people who want to buy them. You're going to want the STL files to work out, so when people buy the STLs, they can print them themselves. And that is something. And sometimes, it goes back and forth a couple times. You try something out. You try to really capture a detail in the concept art, but again, it's just too thin. It's not going to work. You have to simplify. Sometimes you have to change a detail entirely. So there's quite a long workflow from idea to finished kind of 3D model. Like, to give you an example, some of the models you've been seeing for the expansion that I've been posting on the Facebook, those concepts we literally came up with almost a year ago, last fall. And only just now, like 9 months later, are we getting like actual finished 3D models.
So there's a lead time. There's a lead time from the time you guys think about it, to the time you put it in the pipeline, and then when it comes out the other end, it's been 9 months of development.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. That's not the case with everything. Obviously, There's a large workflow because we're doing so many units at once. We're not just doing one at a time. Usually it's you're writing entire batches of units for factions, and then they all kind of get funneled into a concept art pipeline, and then one by one they get funneled into a modeling pipeline. But there's quite a lot that goes into making a functional kind of printable, castable miniature.
That was me.
Okay, hang on. I heard my phone in the other room. Looks like we have about 7 minutes left.
Yeah, so you have that long lead time, but that gives you time to make changes. And I understand the compromise between, okay, here's what we want it to look like, right? Here's what the artist thinks it should look like. Now we have to make it functional on the tabletop for a game.
Yep.
You know.
Definitely.
So there's that compromise. So when you guys, so let's go over some of the factions, which are absolutely fascinating. So let's start with the Federation and then work our way through the factions and how you envision each one of those factions.
All right, yeah. So the Federation, that was Roberto's brainchild. He's a native New Yorker, so of course he wanted to base the faction around New York. So the kind of overall idea is that after the shattering, right, that reshapes the Earth, all of the continents, the ones that haven't completely broken apart and shifted around, society is kind of reformed around old population centers, things like that, in the several 100 years in between the disaster and now. So really the east coast of the United States is the only thing that kind of has formed around itself as a city-state that's become large enough to call itself a world power. And their overall goal is to start moving westward, right? They want to recapture, they want to recolonize the entirety of the United States. Their kind of mantra is that the old country was something that was, desirable and powerful, and they're slowly moving across and they want to conquer it. They've made it as far as Boston. They've ate up some of the East Coast. They're trying to get into the Midwest, but the biggest difficulty is that a lot of the old U.S. cities have turned into their own U.S. city-states. So not all of them necessarily want to be conquered and want to be a part of the Federation. So we'll see more of that as more kind of material is created. And some of the other kind of city-states in the U.S. may even have potential to be their own factions.
Right.
So the Federation technology is pretty robust. They are able to mass produce a lot of high-tech stuff. They have a decent understanding of how the Crystallum works and how to use it to fuel their weapons and vehicles. So they're a bit more on the technically sophisticated side. Not as much as the Council, but definitely more than the Blast. So moving over to the Atlantic Council, they are kind of, at the pinnacle of technology, right?
Right.
They have the power of the Nuvelites, which are essentially, people who can use magic, psychic powers, all that stuff, based around the old kind of French territories. They're kind of a conglomeration of the old Western European powers. These city-states that have cropped up after the fall of the old world has kind of formed into this like pseudo United Nations. They have a high council of different members of each council state, and they kind of operate as one united front. They have the best technology. They're the Chevalier tanks, they're Aegis tanks. They're big and they're bad, and they've got some big laser guns. And I'm just so happy with the way those models have come out. They have a very kind of very sophisticated. Trying to think of the word. It's very sophisticated look. I really like the way that their models came out. The Gendarmes with their big trench coats, the Chevalier and Aegis tanks with just how big they are and how big and scary the weapons look. They are definitely.
But you were very purposeful in giving them that aesthetic for that entire faction.
Yes, yeah, we definitely wanted to make them look different, and we wanted their technology to look more imposing and to look more kind of indomitable in the faces of the other factions. So that's why their vehicles have such a striking profile. The other thing is they have weapons that really utilize the Pierce tag a lot. I mean, even their standard infantry rifles are have the Pierce 1 tag. Even though they're still small arms, they still have that armor pen. So their infantry, and then they have their specialized infantry with the men-at-arms and all that stuff. They are very specialized. Their guys are very, very points heavy too, especially if you upgrade them all with shield generators, but that gives you that extra save dice. So they are really, really elite. And then on the other end of things, we have the Blast, which are kind of what Eastern Europe became, what happened to the Soviet Union after the fall of society. They become this kind of nomadic group where there is a so-called head office essentially in Moscow, but all of the Vlast city-states operate as these kind of roving, moving fortress factories where they can literally kind of drive up to where you're at, dump a bunch of military forces there. They can take whatever they want from you, and then they can move away again. Or they can set up shop and they can start building another fortress city. And they're really cool. They use a lot of old Soviet tech. They really don't know exactly how a lot of that stuff works anymore. They're kind of just reusing a lot of like old T-series tanks, things like that. BMPs show up with kind of higher tech weaponry grafted onto them. And we have that kind of reflected through like the weak frame rules and the fact that their tanks aren't as good as the other factions in some cases. Their weapons are still very powerful, but when you start taking hits, it's likely that your vehicles will start falling apart because they're simply not built to keep up with the vehicles of the other factions. But on the other end, these vehicles are a little bit cheaper to reflect that.
Okay.
So they have well, definitely not a horde army, I would say. They definitely get a handful more guys on the table, especially if you want to go cheaper with certain things like the guards. You could always go very expensive with their Spetsnaz infantry, which all have 3-shot rifles and can take a bunch of different upgrades to kind of get different weapons and anti-tank weapons and things like that. You could even go expensive with the vehicles. You know, the T-72 rail carrier, that thing packs a punch. It's a 3 damage, very large gun, and the tank itself has feel no pain. It has our version of kind of a feel no pain, Crystallum treated armor.
Okay.
So there's definitely a flexibility to that faction. Do you want to go with lower quality troops? We get a little bit more of them. Do you want to go with the more elite stuff and kind of be almost more on par with the Atlantic Council? There's definitely that flexibility there, which makes them fun to play. And then finally, we have, I guess, the true horde army, you can call it, is the Crystallum horde. So that is where you get all of your creatures, you know, your everything from zombies, the shattered men, to the assassins, which are their shooting capable units. They have very kind of odd vehicles, and their command structure works completely different from the other factions. Instead of getting, you know, infantry or tank commanders to kind of move around and give orders out to your different troops, the Crystallum right now, at least in the core book, are stuck with the command node, which is a almost piece of terrain that acts as your commander. It's a static kind of node.
Okay,
that sits there.
That's unique.
And it doesn't move, but what it can do is it can take these little guys called walker nodes, which are like these little tanks, and they can walk around the field. And when you issue your commands, you actually measure off of either the command node itself or those little vehicles. And the little vehicles can pack a punch as well because they can use the same psychic attacks as the node. So not only does your opponent have to worry about this kind of big piece of crystal that's sitting in the backfield commanding around your troops and zapping anything that comes too close, it can send out its little mech minions to do its bidding as well. So you can get a really, really, really far command range if you know how to play that unit correctly. And they have a ton of other fun units as well. The Monstrosity. Monstrosity has a really big gun and a really big melee attack, and you can squadron them up. So those definitely are something to be aware of, be careful of. And I'm really just excited overall to see how people use the miniatures, if people, you know, play the rules as is, or if they want to modify them, or if they want to use the miniatures in any other game. I'm dying to see what people do with them.
Well, I know that one of the major rules in gaming is once you've printed them, they become your rules, right? So once they're in your gamer's hands, you know, they get to tweak and fiddle, you know, as they see fit. But to your point, I'm really curious to see the paint jobs. I hope people will part of the community, once they get the miniatures in their hands, will paint them up and then share the pictures with us. You know, I'm really excited, you know, to see, you know, see how people utilize that. I think
definitely. I want to see. I've obviously had some guys close to the project, you know, locally who I've gotten some minis to do some painting and stuff like that. A shout out to Jason Chan, who did this amazing gray and red like camo scheme for some Federation stuff I gave to him to paint. That was really cool, and that was way out of left field. My buddy Kim as well has done some really cool glass paint jobs. And I'll get more of those out on the Facebook group as well when I talk to those guys. And I'll keep updating things and showing off miniatures when I can on the Facebook group. It may slow down a bit now just because we have to run the Kickstarter and all that stuff. But I'll keep up with engaging people with the stuff.
Oh yeah, this is not a one and done project, people. This is something that's going to carry on for quite some time because even with the supplements and the stuff that you've been working on for next year. To your point, it's a 9-month development cycle. So you have things that you haven't shown yet that you're currently working on. And I saw some of the sneak peeks that you posted up. Why don't you just give us a quick hint on some of that?
So right now, and it's an ongoing project, just started last week. So the layout process. The first expansion book for the game is already written. It's already been tested. It's something we've been working on since last year. And it's finally going to layout. It's going to be pretty much, it's going to be a big book. It's going to probably be double the size of the core book. It's going to have 3 new factions. I won't go too into them right now, but I'll give you their names. So we got the Heralds of the Apocalypse. We got the Kaiser Tribes. And we have the Pan-Asian Corporate Alliance.
Okay.
And we're really going crazy with the rules. We're really taking some risks, and we're doing some weird stuff. I think we're breaking the mold of just doing kind of like, here's some infantry, here's some tanks.
Yeah.
We're doing some wild stuff in the expansion book. Expansion book's going to have a full errata, which will be posted separately for free as soon as I get that laid out. It will have tons of rules to customize your army. It will have different platoons you can take with different makeups. So if you want like a bunch of airplanes in one list, you can do that.
Oh, really?
List. Yeah. It's going to be very, very customizable in the expansion. Right now, it's kind of very static in the core book. You can only build your list in a single way. And we wanted to kind of start small and see where we can grow. So in the expansion, you're going to be able to build units of tons of stuff. You can have an all-flyer, not all-flyer list, but you can have a lot of flyers on a list if you want, which will, make an AA-centric list kind of justifiable in the expansion. There'll be special characters. We came up with some special characters for each faction. There'll be brand new units for the existing factions, as well as full rosters for the new ones. The expansion book, even though it's going to be double the size of the core book, is still going to be fully illustrated. I spent a lot of money on artwork.
Yeah.
So that'll be really, really crazy and cool to see all the artwork in there.
So even though new items are being released, you still will have support for the original launch factions. There'll still be new stuff coming out.
Factions will get at least 2 new units, and the original launch factions also get a special character, a named special character, which at some point will have their own models as well. That's in the pipeline, but everything is quite. I have quite the project line right now, and obviously the Kickstarter comes first.
Yeah, and you have a lot of stuff to keep you. I mean, so for those of you who are part of this community, this is not just a one and done project. This will have a long tail. We'll be releasing stuff for years to come. So we've put so much into this up front. And so that's why the Kickstarter is important, because we pay our artists, we pay our writers, we pay people for their time and labor because we appreciate the skills and talent that people have put into this, and we want them to be reimbursed for that. So this is people made the investment. Now it's time to get a return on that investment, and the return on the investment is the Kickstarter. You get really beautiful miniatures. You get an exquisitely detailed sci-fi game that you can play for years to come. Tell us about the replayability of Crystallum.
So, like any war game, really, you can play the game in a number of different ways. We have, in the core book, we have 4 missions.
Okay.
And in the expansion book, there's 4 more missions, and some of them I'm really into. And even in the future, there may be new missions released for free and PDF and all that stuff. But right now, we really, really kind of have gotten a lot of replayability out of the missions, and even kind of making our own stuff. Even in the core book, we say, if you guys want to make your own missions, if you guys want to try out something completely crazy, like go ahead. The rules they're there to provide structure, but they're also there to kind of
give you goalposts. Stay with them.
Yeah. Really kind of like offer a baseline for people to go nuts. And again, if you want to grab the miniatures and use them in other games, they are really cool. They're really great minis, and again, I'd love to see what people are going to do with them.
Yeah, I think and sci-fi in 15 millimeter. I know it's really popular in England, and I don't know. It's hard to gauge how popular it is here in America. But I think that there's a lot of mixing and matching that goes on. So when people get this, if you think of an idea and you already have some sci-fi miniatures you want to add to it, you can just mix those right in with the miniatures that we have in the game, and then to spice up your faction as you see fit.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and if you have other minis you want to use in Crystallum too, that's something you can always do. You can kind of hybridize multiple model ranges. You can take the Crystallum models, use them elsewhere, take other models, use them in Crystallum.
Yeah.
It's really, and that kind of gives me, that's an interesting thing too for to talk about inspiration for units. We started using a lot of just base historicals. Like when we started first testing the game rules before we had any of our own models,
Right.
we just had plastic T series tanks and Abrams and things like that. So that right there gave us like some interesting ideas of like, oh, what if we take like this weird kind of model that one of us has and we make our own version and it looks like this instead, and it's got like this crazy gun instead. So
Right.
there's a lot of inspiration to be had there.
Yeah, and you're in the art direction is spot on. I mean, I think that it gives it the feel when you read the stories about the game, the fluff in the game. The artwork really conveys that kind of apocalyptic future. Struggling to come back. I really like that, and the miniatures. Normally a lot of times there's not a one-to-one translation to the tabletop, but with this game, there's a direct correlation, between the two and the way they look. And I'm really surprised at how close you could keep the physical product to what the artwork was. Because the artwork is pretty far out there.
Yeah, so that's actually something, and even in the expansion book, we're really improving upon that because we have like actual miniatures now. The artwork in the expansion book you'll see is actually those miniatures. So when you see an illustration, you'll see that like actual figure, and that's so cool to see, like in a battle scene or like in a profile shot. Like we do a lot of lore on the different vehicles and things like that in the expansion, and just seeing like the model in 2D that someone drew out looks really really cool. And lore is another big one. So to give you a little teaser, I'm doing a ton more lore for the expansion. It's going to be everything's going to be fleshed out. Vehicles, the different nations, the kind of overall backstory of what we're focusing on in the expansion, which is going to be the War for the Kaiser vein, which is mentioned in the core book. It's
Right.
It's in a Crystallum in the middle of Europe. Everyone's fighting over it. To give you an example, the lore in the core book, because we started pretty small, I think it's 3 pages, and it doesn't have any visuals in the core book. For the expansion book, I think the lore is going to be almost 20 pages up front, and it has gorgeous artwork to go along with it. That's interspersed with a copy.
Yeah, which
So
speaks to
really,
your
really fleshing things out.
yeah, which speaks to your ability to expand on the game moving forward.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then as the world building, right? As you get
Yeah,
more
we
deeper
have,
into it, you get more fluff, you get more things that are going on with the factions. You can expand the story. New miniatures come out, new scenarios come out, and on and on and on. And I really like the addition of the flyers, which didn't start off in the original beta test, right?
so the flyers came later. The VTOLs are still in the core book, right? You still have your VTOL choice. They're fairly limited in the core book, but in the expansion, you can have a whole bunch of VTOLs if you want. There's even a VTOL commander, which actually I got that model prototyped, and I should be getting it this week or next week in the mail. And as soon as I get it painted up, I will show it off on Facebook. It is so cool looking. And another big thing we're adding in the expansion that didn't make it into the core book, but will be there in expansion, is fighters. So jets, things like that. Rapid attack fighters, bombing capable craft, all that
Okay.
stuff. And they work totally different than the normal VTOLs.
Yeah. So people, this is going broad and deep. Which I hope everybody appreciates. So get on over to the Kickstarter. Grab our early bird specials. There's limited numbers of physical product that can go out. So get in, get yours early. Is there anything you want to leave our community with, Chris, before we log out?
I just want to thank everybody for all the support, all the kind comments on all the stuff I've been sharing. It's been being somebody who's been in the nerd kind of fandom for a while, and somebody who just has tons of anxiety all the time. It's hard for me to kind of put myself out there and do something like this, and it's really been. I've had a lot of. I've had a lot of mental hurdles to kind of get over and put myself out there. Finally, do something like this, and all the support. I just want to say thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to doing more with this project. I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter, and I want to thank everybody who's worked on this, and Lee, thank you as well. And I mean, I could never make this happen by myself. It's really
Sure.
it's so many people have put time in, and there's so much more time and effort that needs to go into this. By no means done. And we have the entire Kickstarter to do and fulfill, and then all the stuff that comes after, and even now. Shout out to Joe Baker, who's an amazing artist, amazing graphic designer, who's doing our expansion book layout, doing that with him. There's still so much more to be done, so really we're kind of only getting started here.
Yeah, so this is and we want the community to know this is the beginning. You were here when it first launched, so when you're sitting in your rocking chair and you can tell your kids, "Oh, I remember that game when it first launched." But again, we couldn't have done it without the support of this community, without the miniatures gaming community. We want to thank you for embracing us and letting us take a risk on this and be able to do something that is that is different. We wanted to put something out there that was unique, that it was a passion project for us, and you guys really brought us in and wrapped your arms around us and allowed us to have a really good, comfortable place to share our ideas and to be able to play the way that we want to play. So we're happy that so many other people have taken this to heart and have become part of this community and has helped this project grow. So get on over to Kickstarter, make your pledges. We know you guys have been waiting for this forever. And Chris, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to do this launch event with us. And we will. This is not the last one. We'll be doing more. We'll be more engaged. We'll have more updates on the Kickstarter, as well as we'll be posting social media all day long. Correct, Chris?
Yeah. That's as soon as I get off this call, that's what I want to start doing.
Yeah. So
links out all over the place.
Yeah. So we'll be spreading links all over the place. Tell friends. So how can you help us? If you don't have any money right now, you can share the link. If you have money, pledge. Get your reward. It doesn't cost you anything to share it across social media, to invite friends to be a part of it that you might think are interested in it. We don't want to spam, like the 40K sites that may not be interested. But if you have friends that are playing 15 millimeter or want to get into some new sci-fi, please share this with them. Because this is how we build and grow the community with a like-minded people that want to roll some dice and paint some miniatures and have a great time.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's our. I think
that's our time. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What up?
Dude, I'm sending you a photo right now.
Okay. In what? In
phone texting. I just think it's funny.
Okay.
Dude, I'm literally it's sunny today, so I'm out here cooking your resin. I'm flipping them over like frickin' burgers.
You finally got a sunny day?
Oh my god, well Sunday, it was sunny. Well, it wasn't sunny, right? So we took our kids and stuff up to a farmer's market that was 30 miles north.
Uh-huh.
And it was sunny. So I rushed back here and it's